You say you want to be happy, but do you really want what happiness requires? Welcome back to Bookworm. Today, we're diving into The Courage to Be Happy by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga, the philosophical continuation of Adlerian psychology. This book challenges something subtle but powerful. Most people don't struggle with happiness because they can't find it. They struggle because happiness demands responsibility. We say we want freedom. We say we want change. We say we want peace. But freedom means no one else to blame. Change means discomfort. Peace means letting go of resentment. That's heavy. This book argues that happiness is not about circumstances. It's about how you relate to your tasks, your relationships, and your role in the community. And that's uncomfortable because it shifts the focus from what happened to me to how do I choose to respond? If you've ever felt stuck in frustration, waiting for someone else to change, if you've ever believed your situation determines your happiness, this book will challenge that. Stay with me until the end, because once you understand this framework, you'll start noticing how often we avoid happiness simply because it requires courage. If this kind of philosophical psychology resonates with you, like the video, subscribe to Bookworm, and tell me in the comments what feels heavier, freedom or comfort. Let's begin.
Today, we're jumping into The Courage to Be Happy, a book that really challenges something most of us just assume is true, that happiness is something we have to go out and find. Instead, this book argues that happiness isn't found at all. It's something we have to actively choose, every single day. It's a journey, framed as this really intense conversation that might just flip how you think about your own life and your own happiness. Okay, let's get into it. But here's the thing. Our story doesn't start with some big, inspiring idea. It starts with this. A really powerful, almost angry rejection of the very philosophy we're here to talk about. This isn't just someone disagreeing. This is a flat-out declaration that the ideas of Alfred Adler are not just wrong, but they're dangerous. And it's this raw conflict that really sets the stage for everything we're about to unpack. So, who's in this conversation? Well, we have two key voices. On one side, there's the youth. Now, 3 years ago, this guy was so fired up by the philosopher's teachings on Adlerian psychology that he actually quit his job to become a teacher to put it all into practice. But now he's back, and he's completely disillusioned. He feels totally betrayed by the very ideas he once believed in. And on the other side, you've got the philosopher. He's calm, he's steady, and he's ready to show the youth where he went so wrong. And this right here is the heart of the youth's problem, his real-world failure. He took a core Adlerian idea for teachers, don't use praise or punishment to control your students, and he applied it, just like he was told. The result? Total chaos. His classroom became a disaster zone, and his idealism just shattered. So you see, he's not coming back with some abstract philosophical question. He's coming back with a mess on his hands, and he's convinced the philosophy itself is what failed him. Now, you might expect the philosopher to start defending that no praise, no punishment rule, but he doesn't. Instead, he goes deeper. He brings up a much more fundamental concept that he says the youth completely misunderstood. And this right here is where we hit the absolute core of Adlerian thinking. The problem wasn't the philosophy, it was how it was applied. The key to understanding why is this incredibly powerful idea called the separation of tasks. So what on earth is the separation of tasks? It's a simple idea, but it's also pretty radical when you let it sink in. It basically says that most of our problems with other people, our anger, our stress, our suffering, it all comes from getting tangled up in other people's business, their tasks, or from letting them get tangled up in ours. Just think about it for a minute. How much of your daily frustration comes from trying to control things that are ultimately not your job to control? The very first step to real freedom is learning to draw a very, very clear line and ask, okay, is this my task or is it someone else's? Let's make this super concrete with the book's classic example. You've got a kid who just won't do their homework. The parents are freaking out, they're yelling, they're putting on the pressure. But Adlerian psychology tells you to ask one simple question to figure out whose task it is. Who ultimately bears the consequences of this choice? Who's going to get the bad grades? Who might miss out on future opportunities? Well, the answer is obvious, right? It's the child. That means studying is the child's task. The parent's anxiety about it, that's their task to manage. But trying to force the studying, that's crossing a boundary into someone else's life. Okay, let's take this to the workplace. Imagine you get a promotion, and a colleague is just radiating resentment. You can feel it. You might start feeling guilty or feel like you need to do something to make them feel better. But wait. According to this principle, how they choose to feel about your success, that is 100% their task. You can't control their emotions. Your task is to do your job well, be a good colleague. Trying to manage their envy for them is a recipe for disaster because it's a task you can never, ever complete. And one more. Let's look at friendship. You give a friend some advice, they completely ignore it, and things go south for them. You feel that spike of frustration thinking, if only they'd listen to me. But let's ask the question, whose task was it to make that final call? It was theirs. Your task, if you chose, was to offer support and your 2 cents. But the final decision and whatever came from it, that belonged completely to them. That frustration you feel, it often comes from getting way too invested in someone else's task. You know, this slide is so interesting because it shows why it's so hard for us to separate tasks. When we're faced with a problem, we tend to grab onto two sides of what the book calls a triangular column of avoidance. First, we might blame that bad person. My boss is terrible, my partner doesn't understand, these students are impossible. Or we flip it around and we play the victim. We lament, poor me. Both of these are traps. They make us feel like we're doing something, but they're just dead ends. The Adlerian way is to consciously turn that column to face the third side. You ignore the blame, you ignore the victimhood, and you ask the only question that actually gives you power. Okay, what should I do from now on?
Okay, so if separating our tasks frees us up from a lot of unnecessary pain, that's kind of the what not to do part. But that's only half the story. Now we need to figure out what happiness actually is. And that means we have to move away from a trap we all fall into, that constant, exhausting search for praise, for approval, for someone else to tell us we're doing a good job. To really get what Adlerian happiness is all about, we have to first understand this idea of community feeling. Now, this isn't some fluffy, idealistic concept. It's actually super practical and grounded. As humans, we're kind of weak. We can't survive alone. Our entire existence from day one has been built on cooperation. Community feeling is that deep, gut-level awareness of this fact, that we're all connected, all in this together, comrades in the shared task of just living.
And this is a really important point. Community feeling isn't something you have to go out and get. The philosopher argues it's already in you. It's inherent to who we are as social creatures. So the work isn't about creating it from nothing. The work is about digging it up, uncovering it from under all the layers of ego and competition, and that need to be special that our modern world just heaps on top of us. And this just puts it so perfectly. If we can tap into that community feeling, that sense of being part of a whole, then happiness gets really, really simple. It is the subjective feeling that I am of use to someone. That's it. It's not about getting a thank you. It's not about getting praise. It's just that internal personal sense that you are contributing something, anything to your community, that you're useful. So this all sounds great, right? But how do we actually live like this? I mean, it's one thing to understand that happiness is about contributing, but it's a whole other thing to feel it when we are so wired to seek approval. The answer, according to Adler, is courage. But it's a very specific kind of courage, one that demands we totally change how we see ourselves.
This slide breaks down that absolutely critical difference. See, most of us spend our lives chasing self-esteem, but self-esteem is conditional. It's the voice that says, I'm valuable if I get that A, or if people like my post, or if I get the promotion. It's incredibly fragile. It's a roller coaster that goes up and down based on things we can't even control. What Adlerian psychology pushes for is self-acceptance, and that is unconditional. It's the decision to accept yourself as you are right now. It's accepting that you're maybe a 60 out of 100 today, and then just focusing on getting to 61, instead of beating yourself up for not being 100.
And this leads to this wonderfully freeing idea, the courage to be normal. Think about it. We live in a world that is screaming at us to be special, to stand out, to be extraordinary. Adler suggests that maybe the real courage is just accepting our own ordinariness. When we let go of that need to be the best, the smartest, the most popular, we're finally free from that exhausting treadmill of competition. We can just be. And we can contribute from that quiet, solid place. So here's the key takeaway. Courage isn't a feeling. It's not about not being afraid. Courage is a behavior. It's a choice. It's choosing to separate your tasks when every fiber of your being wants to control what someone else is doing. It's choosing to do something helpful even if you know you won't get any credit for it. It's taking that first step, making that phone call, starting that project with no guarantee it's going to work out. It's just the decision to act. All right, so let's tie all these threads together. We've talked about separating tasks, about happiness being contribution, and about courage being a behavior. The philosopher argues that all of these big ideas come together and find their most challenging and most beautiful expression in the life task of love. He calls it the one task that has to be accomplished by two people.
This table shows the progression perfectly. In our work lives, it's mostly about my happiness, right? Self-interest. We cooperate because it helps us get what we need. Then in friendship, we take a huge leap. It becomes about your happiness. We believe in a friend unconditionally, for their sake. But love, the philosopher says, is something else entirely. It goes beyond both. It's about creating a new entity, an inseparable us, and then working together to pursue our happiness.
And here is the beautiful paradox at the heart of it all. The ultimate goal of this entire philosophy in our lives, in raising our kids, is self-reliance. But true self-reliance isn't about being a lone wolf who doesn't need anyone. It's the exact opposite. It's having the ability to break away from our own suffocating self-centeredness, to finally escape the prison of me, me, me. And this is where it all comes together. The act of truly loving another person and building an us is like a training ground for that bigger community feeling. It's where we practice every single day, switching the main character of our life story from I to we. And once you can really do that with one person, that feeling can just expand outward. The us that starts with two people can grow to include your family, your friends, your community, and eventually, everyone. And so, this is what it all boils down to. The philosopher's final advice to the youth and to us. It's this powerful three-step sequence. Love, which is the path to breaking free from yourself. Be self-reliant, which is the true freedom you get after you break free. And finally, choose life. Choose to courageously engage with your tasks, with other people, with the world as it is. At the end of the day, this whole big philosophy really just comes down to a series of small choices we make every single day, in every single interaction. It's not about finding some magic bullet. It's about practicing over and over, the courage to separate tasks, to contribute without needing a reward, and to just accept ourselves. So the final question isn't some big abstract thing. It's immediate. If happiness really is a choice, what courageous choice, no matter how small it seems, are you going to make today?
If this book felt uncomfortable, that's the point. The courage to be happy doesn't give you techniques. It gives you responsibility. It asks you to stop waiting. Stop waiting for validation. Stop waiting for circumstances to shift. Stop waiting for someone else to change. Adlerian psychology suggests that happiness isn't something granted. It's something practiced through contribution and courage. And courage doesn't mean feeling brave. It means acting despite discomfort. One of the most powerful ideas in this book is that resentment often protects us from responsibility. It's easier to stay angry than to move forward. But once you understand the separation of tasks, you stop carrying what isn't yours. That's freedom. Not light freedom, heavy freedom. If something in this conversation challenged you, comment below what idea stood out most. And if you want more books that question your assumptions rather than comfort them, make sure you're subscribed to Bookworm. Next week, we go even deeper into human behavior. Until then, ask yourself, are you avoiding happiness because it demands courage?